It's time to join Montana's very own and your voice for agriculture, Talkin' Ag Lane Nordlund, for today's LaneCast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the LaneCast Ag Podcast. Thanks for joining the agriculture conversation. We're on the road this week at Angus Convention 2024, and we have producers from across the nation gathered here in Texas, and a lot of opportunities that we are talking about in the cattle business. But in particular, we are going to be focused on opportunities for commercial cattlemen here today and how they can work with so many different aspects of the Angus breed to help have a better herd, market their cattle a little better, and of course, just be profitable in the countryside. And I'm excited to be joined here today by our friend Troy Marshall with Angus Link. Thanks for joining us here today, Troy. A familiar face and voice. And then also Leann and John Saunders joining us with IMI Global and Where Food Comes From. Thanks for joining us here in Texas today.
Thanks for having us.
And then on the end, we have another John joining us from California, John Dickinson, on the Angus Board of Directors and kind of oversees the commercial end of things for the association as well. John, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
But, we wouldn't be in the livestock business unless we asked about weather and how things are at home. So, John, how are things there in California? What's the winter shaping up there in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, and California is primarily a fall calving kind of country, and so there's a lot of talk about rain as always. We kind of hope that rain comes here in November and just kind of goes all the way through the spring. We've had 2 good rain years, and we know that we're only a season away from our next drought, but things are in great shape. I mean, the markets in terms of both feeder cattle and purebred bull sales have been very healthy, puts everybody in a pretty good mood. So I think right now we just wrapped up a great September bull sale season, and I think things look really good.
Yep. John, for yourself, how have things been in Colorado and all out and about for your crew here this year?
It's been dry in Colorado. It's been a really exciting year. A lot of stuff going on for us. Our relationship with Angus has been really coming to fruition this summer, so we're very excited about it.
And Leann, for yourself, how are things going?
Great.
We're at Angus Convention.
We're at Angus Convention. We're having fun together. So no, it's been a great time here at the convention. A lot of great information being shared. So it's been wonderful.
Well, and that's what I hope to do today is share more information just about how we can enhance market access for producers on the commercial end and more opportunities on the seed stock end of things. And there's just been so much innovation and work in creating these. This isn't just something that was discovered one day during a committee meeting. Here's our program. No, the idea came up there. Maybe came up at the convention bar too. Yeah. But a lot of ideas come out of an association. Like, yes, we're here at the trade show, but this is an association that creates policy, that sets a path forward for seed stock producers, for commercial cattlemen alike. And so Angus Link, we've talked about Angus Link before. We've talked about how it is a tool to really look at so many different aspects of marketing your cattle, enhancing your cattle. Troy, I'll put you on the spot first. Well, let's just do a quick overview of what Angus Link is, and we're going to throw in some new additions to the program here throughout our conversation. But when you're meeting somebody for the first time, what is Angus Link?
Yeah, the basis of the program was just a lot of frustration that people weren't getting rewarded for the superior genetics that they were creating. And in the sea of black-hided cattle as well, there was a desire to differentiate those Angus genetics out there. And so really, the Angus Link program was created to specify and designate those cattle that are out of Angus sires, and then with the Genetic Merit Scorecard, we have the opportunity the first time to objectively and reliably describe the genetic merit dependent feeder cattle.
Well, and that's a lot. That's a lot to process. But again, that's why we're having this conversation here today, is to make it simple, to not scare people away, to maybe address some of the myths, and not necessarily myths, but maybe just information that can be overwhelming, but it's actually simple once you have that conversation. And Leann, from the partnership with Angus Link and IMI, what role are you playing in this partnership? Let's kind of maybe discuss that, and that can open up our door into overall Angus Link and the partnership with IMI.
So when we formed the partnership in 2023, it was really trying to take what Angus does exceptionally well, which is really work on genetics and how we move that forward. in the markets of quality and beef palatability. And then what we were focused on, which was a third-party verification company, and really taking that out to all of our customers across the United States and Canada, and really trying to build upon what we could do together and adding in other attributes like source and age verification, which are also incredibly important in the marketplace. And again, just getting more of the information out so we get more uptake.
Well, and as a host, I didn't ask the question of sharing more about IMI either. So I'm glad you took the reins there and said, "This is what we're doing. We're third-party verification." John, how did IMI and Where Food Comes From? How did that idea come about?
Yeah.
How did you two work together to see this vision, to fill a need, and to work with not only the livestock industry but so many different sectors out there in agriculture and abroad?
Yeah. When we met, I was actually developing software to incorporate these new identification tags that some cattle producers were using. Ironically, I worked with Farmland Supreme Beef Alliance, which was also an Angus program. And a lot of the seed stock producers that were part of that program are continuing on today. I think there was only one, right, that isn't still involved. So what I brought to the table was no money, no vocational experience, but I had some ambition to develop a livestock tracking system. And one of the key components of everything that we do is we source verify, as Leann said. So the traceability and the ease of being able to put tags in and then to be able to read them has been really exciting for me as a developer of the software. So when Leann and I got together, she was working with a company called PM Beef Group that was a really early adopter of the Process Verified program. So we really didn't know exactly how we were going to work together until BSE. And then it became obvious that we needed a traceability system and the verification and the ability to certify export products. So it was that combination between the two of us. And obviously she's got, growing up on a ranch, she's got a lot more domain experience than I do. I came from Ohio. But yeah, it was a match made in heaven in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that preview too, and I think that just sets up the conversation about just how these parties can work together to create these pathways forward for producers. And again, we're always looking to market our cattle better. We're always looking for that path forward to say, hey, I got a few more dollars at the sale this year, and we've seen some tremendous growth. And John, from your perspective on the livestock end of things, what has it been like to see the growth of AngusLink and the enrollment of producers looking at saying, hey, I got Angus genetics in my herd, and I want to be rewarded for buying those good bulls, raising these good commercial cattle. What has that been like?
I think it's just been fantastic. I mean, just a little bit of my background. I was, even though I work with raised cattle in California, I'm a former employee of American Angus. So I was a regional manager, covered the West Coast, and back in the early 2000s when the Angus Source program started, kind of the precursor to this program, I did some of the first audits out in Imlay, Nevada, and just getting it off the ground. So seeing the transitions till now has just been really exciting for me personally. And when you take the topic of commercial producers within the American Angus Association, you know, we could look at it as one aspect, as the association provides services for their membership, and the commercial producers not necessarily paying dues or fees or contributing to just the income or revenue side of the association. But there's not one member that will tell you that they are the most important part of our system. That is our lifeblood, and then if they don't have any kind of sustainability or profitability, we're smoked on the seed stock side. So the commercial programs department has grown a lot over the years too. Now with this program, I think you'll find that most Angus members are great producers, great managers, maybe at times not the best marketers, and this was where a program like this is just built in for them to provide for their bull buyers, to provide a little extra level of service, to get their exposure. And if they want those bull buyers to pay top dollar on those sales, they got to reward something on the back end. And this fits lockstep with that. So I think everybody's pretty excited about it.
Now, we mentioned there was some growth from 2023 to 2024. Troy, what was that growth like? And What's it like working with these producers and learning about that enrollment and the verification and the audits and everything that takes place and improving the process too? But what was that growth like to watch the growth occur?
Well, it's been really exciting because we all believed in as Leann mentioned, when we kind of got in our right lanes with us focusing on the genetic side and letting IMI do what they do best, we saw phenomenal growth. I think the first year was over 400% for us, which was tremendous. And we're building on that at about an 80% growth here this last year. And from a premium standpoint, I think we were all a little concerned with just the level of prices there were in the industry of whether or not these premiums would hold. And we continue to see those premiums across any of these differentiated programs be extremely strong. For the Angus Link cattle, whether they were in NHTC, all natural, all the way through, we saw a premium this last year, $16.61 per hundredweight. So really good return on investment.
That's important to point out too, because as we've discussed before, I mean, we are seeing these high cattle prices, whether it is through the ring or on the video markets. And when you're seeing the high end of things, I think that's where some people are saying, well, some of these additional programs that you can enroll your cattle in, maybe they're not bringing the premium right now because they're all bringing that price. And I don't think that's maybe a mentality that people should have, because you enroll in those programs when the market isn't at the height, you are receiving the best market opportunity. But I just think that's a great example of how Angus Link is setting itself apart and why people are buying these Angus influenced cattle.
Yeah, the neat thing is eugenics have never been worth more than they are today, and so the demand from the buyer side has been tremendous. What we really, it's a neat position to be in, but we have more demand than we have supply.
I find it interesting too that enrollment increased even as our U.S. cattle herd numbers continue to be at low numbers. I guess, what are your thoughts on that? Anybody can jump in at this point too. John.
I would say the one thing that I've learned over time is that once you integrate a practice, i.e. electronic identification tags, you build your system around that. You build your crew, you build everything that you're doing. So one of the reasons I think that producers do it is because it's the way they've started doing it, and at some point it'll be whatever they've always done. So it's the function of doing it, the simplicity of doing it, again, is really, I think, a driver for producers just to stay engaged.
And to your point about coming in and out of programs, I think one of the dangers is once you build a reputation as a seller and you have buyers that are going to want to buy those cattle year after year, if you come in and out of programs, then you don't have that buyer base. You lose that buyer base and the flexibility.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I've, going to some of the video sales this summer and working with both buyers and sellers alike, that's just what I've seen. When I saw these high prices, I thought, well, they maybe shorten up on some kind of cost, whether it be an audit or a practice or whatnot. And talking to all those producers, the exact same thing. We're not going to change. They're happy getting buyers. They're always wanting to get more potential buyers. They don't want to change their look or their format because those buyers are used to that supply. They don't want to change that one bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a barrier to entry too, where everyone's concerned the first time how hard it's going to be to enroll in these programs. And once they do it, they find out it's actually really fairly simple process and very painless. Then it's much easier to do it the second time as well.
And I want to talk about that enrollment process and how it works. But I do, John, I want to point out, John Saunders, you mentioned EIDs.
Yes.
That's a pretty controversial thing for some cattle producers too. But I want to point out that this is a voluntary program. This is something that people have been, especially IMI, you've been that voluntary third arm to help people say, I want to market my cattle differently. So this is not about USDA's recent EID rule for cattle that it's very controversial out there. But this is, people have been utilizing third-party verification for cattle. You've been providing that for some time too, and this is just another way to market. No one's holding a hot shot to them to enroll in this program, but people are flocking to it, as we said, because of those higher enrollment numbers. But do you want to talk about that, or just? I
would say my answer to that are the buyers and their expectations relative to the traceability. So as I think everybody knows, there's two different types of tags in the markets. There's both 840 tags, but there's also manufacturer coded tags, which we have a number of producers that continue to use. But when a buyer becomes used to the system, meaning when the cattle come in, they're expecting an EID in their ear, and it doesn't work, there's a problem. And the packers, I believe, are at the same point where that ease of use and the speed of the economy is critically important. So if they don't have that, then there's a problem. You have to do extra work.
Yeah. Well, again, I just wanted to bring that up too, because there's a lot of talk about it up there and some uncertainty, just because USDA hasn't done a very good job explaining what's going on here. I'm not trying to make this a political conversation here either, right?
Completely voluntary.
Yeah. This is completely voluntary, but I want to talk about that enrollment. But first, I do want to take a quick break. We're going to be back here with the panel from the Angus Convention in Fort Worth, Texas. But first, these words from our friends at IMI.
There's no question in my mind that third-party verification is important.
It's being verified by someone other than me, and it just gives some confidence to the consumers that we are indeed doing what we say we do.
People want the documentation. They want to know what you're doing. They want to know where the food they're eating, where it came from.
By verifying and documenting and having transparency that they can move forward, and it's a third party that's telling that story, it's to everybody's benefit.
Returning back to the agriculture conversation on the LaneCast Ag Podcast, we are on the trade show floor at Angus Convention 2024, and we're talking about Angus Link and how it is truly one of those programs to help enhance market access for producers and really put profitability and marketing at the top of the equation, along with genetics and all the good work that producers are doing in the countryside and investing in their herd. Just another program to help them conquer the market, I guess we could say. But, as we look at Angus Link, a lot of people may be wondering, how do you enroll? I know we can talk about the benefits and just how much growth we've seen, but you mentioned before the break, Troy, just some people, the first time they do it, there's always concern. There's always, how much is it going to cost? How much time is it going to take? What is the enrollment process like? And then, of course, how does the relationship with IMI play into that enrollment and the audit process?
Yeah. Well, IMI actually does all the work with the customers, hand-on experience with them. It's really, really simple. They can call IMI, just say they want to enroll in Angus Link, and they go through the agent source verification process there. If they want to do any of the other programs that IMI offers, then they can enroll at the same time. And all we really require from the Angus Link standpoint is we need to have the current bull battery that sired that calf crop, and then some information, very simple information on that cow herd, in terms of the genetics of that cow herd. And from there, we can build out the Genetic Merit Scorecard and get them Angus verified. And so it's not a difficult process at all. And we do have a Gene Max Advantage program, and we've talked about it before, but you do not have to have the cattle DNA'd, any of those things there too. We just need to have the registration numbers of the bulls that you used. And with the Genetic Merit Scorecard, they do not have to be Angus sired as well. So we can use bulls of other breeds there.
Yeah,
too.
I was going to ask you to explain that too, because some people qualify for Angus verified right away, but they don't necessarily have to be Angus verified. Maybe part of their herd is, maybe part of it isn't. So I think that's an important thing to point out with that Genetic Merit Scorecard.
Right. Angus verified is just for those cattle that are 100% Angus sired. And so if we can segregate those out, that's what we do. With the Genetic Merit Scorecard, you can have some Angus, Charolais, Hereford bulls, whatever it may be there. We just need the registrations, the numbers of those bulls as well. And that's really the whole goal, is we want to be able to objectively describe the genetics so those buyers can buy with confidence and be willing to pay premium for those cattle.
So when we're looking at the process, when your IMI teammates are out on the ground, what is that like when they pull into the yard? What are they expecting to see, and what are producers expecting to gain from your trusted teammates out in the countryside?
So specific to the Angus Link program, so Angus Verified and GMS, those are what's called livestock raising claims that are born with the animal. So in that particular process, that allows us to do what we call desk audits. So for those particular claims, we don't actually have to go on site. So it's a records review process, phone audit with the producer. And so it's a very simplistic process to get that accomplished in a short period of time. Now, if they want to add other additive programs, and those become livestock raising claims that change over the lifetime of the animal, USDA requires us then to go on site to conduct that verification activity. Then we will have an auditor that goes on site. One thing we take great pride in is we have regional managers that work with our customers. They all have extensive livestock experience, and our audit teams as well. The last thing we want to do is send someone out to a ranching operation and not have that expertise. So we take a great deal of pride in hiring really, really good people.
And when we talked about the genetic merit scorecard. That's a lot for me here this morning to say. But when we look at that, and we can put a visual up on the video part of our conversation today too while we explain it. Talk about how important that is for buyers to see that, because a lot of the time when people are buying cattle, it is off the reputation. They're like, we know these cattle finished well. We're going to come back and buy these cattle. We're going to bid up those cattle if we can't get them. So let's walk through just how that image and the data that's on it really is helping drive buyers' decision when they're buying on the video or maybe even through the ring on a large load.
Yeah, well, I loved your analogy where you said it was reputation cattle, and really what the Genetic Merit Scorecard or GMS does is it creates reputation cattle, but it does it on a nationwide basis. And those guys, when you had reputation calves, like you said, they had to feed them, they had to own them to know that those cattle were going to stay healthy, grow, gain, convert, and do well on the rail. And what we really do is have an objective measure where those guys can look at a pen of cattle that they don't have firsthand experience with and be able to buy with confidence. And one of the frustrations in our system, it was always they use really good bulls and they've had all their shots. Well, that didn't really tell you a whole lot.
Yep.
And so this is just an opportunity to really differentiate yourself in the marketplace.
And so when we are differentiating that too, obviously there's a lot of feedback from the seed stock producers too. What has been the conversations as we've seen the growth of AngusLink enrollment? What are the discussions with your fellow producers on the board or here around the trade show just about how it's, helping them market more bulls and also, so many producers, they help their commercial producers make decisions and give them advice as well. How is this maybe changing their tune on more marketing opportunities?
Yeah, I think that the first part of that is just that they wanted to have the identity. I mean, I think it's no surprise that out there there is a lot of black and polled cattle, and they wanted to differentiate their customers' cattle that these are out of registered Angus bulls. They've got a lot of merit to them. And before this program was about, like you said, reputation or they buy the best ones, and it seems like everybody bought the best ones. But with this aspect, you can actually quantify that and show that. And I think they like that, the ability to separate those cattle. And second part of that, I would think, is that when their producers are going to sell, they like to have, I guess, what you would say, a program or a validation. I mean, those buyers they're trying to access, I think all the time they're wanting to mitigate some risk. And I think just putting those numbers across to them and showing what the potential performance of those cattle are, I think it's a great reward. And I guess on the flip side, and maybe Troy can speak to this too, we've seen buyers looking at those numbers up there and maybe as much from the buyer end, like, what, run that by me again. What exactly does that mean? Or, okay, I've got 2 sets of cattle coming up. Just the big part, or I guess what I like about the relationship with IMI and where food comes from is just with the growth we've had, it's just more exposure, it's getting more eyes on it. It's almost like advertisement. There's just a lot of questions being asked in today's market, like, tell me about that program. Give me more access to it. Tell me how to use the numbers.
I think we're also starting to see, because we're in our second year, that it is a scorecard. It is a grade in a sense. So if you're a buyer and you see a producer that engages in the program one year, has a score, next year they see a score and it's higher, which is the whole point. Those buyers say, well, that's not only somebody that's willing to give me more information, it's somebody that's willing to improve.
Yep.
And I think that is what I'm really excited about, is that the people that get engaged early on will be, I think, far and ahead, because they'll just have so much more information relative to the journey of getting their genetics the way they really want them to be, and the way that the buyers want them to be.
Well, and you mentioned the buyers and the recognition of these grid premiums. So we discussed earlier this year the announcement of working with National Beef and U.S. Premium Beef. They want these Angus Link GMS cattle too. Let's talk about how that was created, why they're looking at it. I don't know, Troy or John, who wants to
Probably
jump into
Troy.
that, but I mean that's a big opportunity too, and I think it's when we're seeing these processors take note of, hey, these are premium calves coming in, and we're gonna have some premium beef.
Yeah, we were really excited that National came actually to us to discuss this program. And when they added the Genetic Merit Scorecard to their grid with U.S. Premium Beef, it was really pretty historic and transformative in that we've never done that before. They're actually trying to reward producers for what they've done, their decisions they've made on the genetic side of things, and they're still paying the premiums for quality grade, carcass weight, yield grade, all those things through their grid. But they just wanted to reward those producers and recognize the efforts they were making.
So how many loads have gone through at this point? I really put you on the spot right now, Troy. I'm sorry.
What, a little bit over 1,000, I think 1,182 to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't
Probably about 20 loads, I'd say.
Yeah.
20 groups.
So yeah, we just got started. It rolled in August, and then those cattle had to be back verified. And so as we go forward, we really look forward to seeing that grow too from a number standpoint.
The other exciting thing about it, which we talked a little bit yesterday on a panel we were on, is the scores themselves are really, really high.
Yeah.
When you have an average, right, a GMS score of 100, these scores were 116 to 185 thus far going through. So you've got some really quality genetics that National is now getting access to and paying for them in a way that's meaningful.
And sticking to the EID, they're also reimbursing the producer for the cost of the EID. There's a rebate that goes back to the producer. So essentially, if you engage in AngusLink and they end up, GMS, and they end up at National, then you're also going to get that $2 or whatever the amount is that you invested in the tag up front.
And as Leann mentioned too, the quality of those genetics too, starting in December, they saw the value of those cattle, and those are some of the higher scores and what they were doing from a carcass standpoint. So there'll be an additional $5 for any of those cattle with 150 or higher going through starting in December too. So,
Well, it shows results.
Yeah,
And
it's exciting.
I think that's important to point out. And along with that too is so many producers do have other programs that they are a part of. Leann, how do you bundle? How do you work with folks and really have that bundle that everybody's like, this is what we're doing. We want to showcase what we're doing. So what are some of these opportunities to bundle other verification programs with AngusLink if they choose to do so?
So we've always tried to minimize the cost while maximizing value, opportunity, and your buying network. So it really depends on your practices, particularly at the ranch. But if you're interested, if you don't implant, for example, and you're interested in making your cattle eligible for NHTC, which is a non-hormone treated cattle program for the European Union, we can bundle that in. So you have Angus verified, you have source, age verification, you have GMS scorecard, you make your cattle eligible to be for exporters to export it to EU. If you don't implant, you don't use antibiotics, you're in a natural program, you can add on verified natural, makes you eligible to all the natural programs that are out there today that are trying to procure verified cattle. And then our latest is our sustainability platform called CARE. And we'll probably talk more about that at some point, but that is also, we can add that on in a way that's cost effective for the producer, because we just have one verification audit that has to happen for all those things. So trying to maximize carcass utilization for packers so that they can take parts and pieces, whether it's rounds to the EU or they want to potentially take tongues to Japan and Korea. They have the ability to do that.
Well, a lot of opportunities, and we're going to discuss more of that. And Leann, as you mentioned, I think we'll dive into what CARE is, but we are going to take just a quick break. We have these words from Angus Link, but we'll be back here on the LaneCast Ag Podcast right after this.
We've been told not to judge a book by its cover. The same could be said for your cattle. With more black cattle on the market today, wouldn't it be great to capture the extra value you've added to your herd? Angus Link makes cattle stand out. Enrolling in Angus Verified is an objective, reliable way to describe the genetic potential for your cattle, and it signals to buyers yours are different than the rest. The Genetic Merit Scorecard draws on the industry's largest database to evaluate calf genetics and predict performance potential from weaning to the packing plan with real-world data. Claim your competitive edge with Angus Verified and the Genetic Merit Scorecard. 2 programs under one Angus Link.
Returning back today with our guests at the Angus Convention 2024, we are talking about opportunities that producers can partake in, specifically the AngusLink program, but there's also other programs out there that we're going to highlight here today as well. Of course, joining us is Leann and John Saunders from Where Food Comes From and IMI Global. And Leann, before the break, you mentioned CARE. And what is the CARE program? I know it has something to do with sustainability and meeting some goals, but for our friends tuning in here today, what is it and how can they participate in it?
So CARE, which actually the acronym stands for Community of Agriculturists That Respect the Earth, was a standard that we created and launched in 2020 based on the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef's Indicators and Metrics, which is a roundtable of cow-calf producers, backgrounders, feedlots, livestock markets, retailers, food service operators came together and said, we need to define what sustainability means for the individual sectors. So we took that body of work, created a standard for cow-calf producers and backgrounders and feedlots. And what we look at with that particular program is 3 pillars of sustainability. So we look at animal welfare, we look at environmental sustainability, and we look at people and community. And it's really been a great process. We've had unbelievable uptake. Today we have over 1.1 million head that have gone through the program as CARE certified cattle, and over 33 states today, and it covers about 38 million acres. So as we look to meet sustainability goals and position ourselves to tell our story about sustainability and for producers to be able to showcase all the wonderful work that they're doing on their operations, it's a program that's near and dear to our heart because we think it gives us a step up in the market relative to telling our story. It's easy to engage in, like we talked about, so it's just another verification program for us. We take them through the process, and then they can use the CARE certified logo.
Yep. Well, and I think when you look at that too, again, this is an opportunity for enrollment for producers that are already most likely doing almost everything that would qualify them for this voluntary program, but it's also addressing questions that consumers have. And I think that's, again, these are voluntary, but these are ways that, you know, where food comes from. Obviously, you know, you guys were very spot on with your name too, with that aspect of your businesses too. How important is it to listen to consumer preferences when looking at this too? Because, you know, some producers might be listening here today, oh, that sounds like a lot of work, or this is all fluff, but obviously people are enrolling their cattle and they are receiving premiums and they're being innovative as well. I guess, what are your thoughts and comments on that?
So I would say, in order for all of us to stay in business long term, we have to continue to listen to the consumer, and not just the domestic U.S. consumer, but the global consumer. You know, 20% of our products actually go in the global market. There's so much pressure against beef globally in so many different ways that this is our way to take a hold of something and position ourselves and differentiate ourselves and tell our story in a way that consumers can latch onto. And consumers trust ranchers. They trust the people when they hear their stories. The mark of approval just becomes sort of an easy button for buyers to know that these supply chains have gone through this process. So we're just proud to help producers tell their story.
I'm always really focused on information that's important to producers, because most of the producers I've met are data hounds and they want as much as they can read. One of the things that we've talked about, but CARE is also a scored program, meaning that as a producer, you're going to get information not only relative to your own operation, but how your operation compares to other operations around the country, because we have a ranking system, which is very confidential, but it also gives a producer an idea of where they're at and tools and ways that they can make changes and improvements relative to sustainability.
Well, again, thanks for sharing a little bit about that here in our conversation today. Again, just more opportunities that producers can look at through IMI and where food comes from. And, you know, as we center around Angus Link and the collaboration on that front too, you know, we discussed the Genetic Merit Scorecard, and we discussed the new opportunities with national beef and premium beef. But what are some of the feed yards looking at? Again, we're looking at those scores. John, I'm looking at you now too. What are some of the things you're hearing when they're seeing a score of 100 to 150? I think that's one of the numbers that was being thrown out there too. Obviously, you know, when they're buying, they know the numbers. They're gonna look for that. But how are these scores really impacting buying decisions on the video or through the ring when they're looking at these cattle that are enrolled?
Sure, great question, and I think John touched on it with information. What we're doing here in the process is information from the Angus Association on these registered cattle, on their corresponding feeder cattle that are going into the market. And I'm not necessarily sure if it's like we've got high GMS numbers or lower GMS numbers. I don't know if that translates to good numbers and bad numbers. The feeders want the information, and the more that Troy's working with them to understand how the GMS works and what those genetics means and what those numbers means for a grid score or performance or growth or feedlot score. They want the information on how they can manage those cattle. They're going to be in the market buying cattle on a daily basis. They want to know on that set of cattle, if they've got no historical reference or things like that, I can take those pieces of that GMS and I'll manage those cattle in that aspect. So the information transfer, I think, is the key part here. And just, again, we mentioned before, back to mitigating risk. These are just helpful tools, and they're paying a premium for that information.
Yep.
Yeah.
Troy, anything?
No, I think hit it really good. It's kind of a benchmarking tool too.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that maybe enough. We're 100's industry average, and so it allows those producers to know where they are within the industry. And to his point, if you have 100 cattle, you may manage them differently from an implant strategy, even what compositional endpoint you're going to take them to versus those 150s. And so the scorecard increases the value irrespective of what that scorecard is. So.
Yeah, and this is also starting a lot more conversation from those commercial bull buyers back to their seed stock Angus member suppliers too. Like, I marketed my cattle, I'm at this level, so I need to improve this. What can I do?
Yep.
And then that gives it access to that seed stock or that bull supplier. We need to look at these genetics or these bulls to kind of push those cattle in that way too. And there's been a ton of conversation on that end, and just the seed stock supplier customizing that producers' bull buying decisions going forward.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, they don't just sell bulls and say, see you next year. It is about that connection and helping commercial producers build the herd that they need that fits their environments, and of course is the best herd for them too. I love going to bull sales, looking at bulls and looking at catalogs, and just I think having that tool is just one more tool in the toolbox, as Mark McCulley would say too, in the Angus world, to just help people stay profitable.
Well, like Ronald Reagan always said, trust but verify. How do you have reputation cattle if you can't verify? So it's a way to verify what's going on and then reinforce over time. When they actually get the carcass data, and they can say, there's a pretty strong correlation between the GMS score and the way those cattle actually performed. That's when you've hit you've rung the bell right there.
Yeah. Very, very, very good example there too, John. And, we talked about the low cattle herd number, but it's taken me a long time because herd rebuilding has been brought up every conversation I've had this week. So, 45 plus minutes into our conversation today, we're going to bring in, herd rebuilding. Again, I think that's a rumor at this point too, but we can always set goals and watch the weather, see what these trends are going to do. But we know that herd rebuilding will take place someday. And how is AngusLink, what are they doing to not just market cattle through to the beef end of things, to the consumer and the feeder and the processor? How are they maybe looking at the opportunity for that replacement end of things? So you're not just focused on, we're selling beef here, but you're selling replacements as well. What are some of the innovations through the program right now?
Yeah, one of the exciting things, as you said, we're going to expand at some point, and everybody realizes to stay competitive, they want to expand with the right genetics. And we did start to see a lot of producers using the scorecard to sell their replacement females and bred heifers, which that's not a bad thing. It described the carcass side, but it really wasn't defining the maternal side of it.
Yep.
And so the board authorized us to develop a maternal score. And so based off of $M, and so starting in August for the first time, we're offering that. So on those replacement females and bred heifers, those commercial cattlemen that are looking to buy those can look at that maternal score and get a very good idea of how those cattle are going to rank in terms of making good cows.
So John, when they're looking at that score, is it going to look different from the GMS? What other information is in there? And what are some key things that folks should be looking at the score, but also when they're evaluating those replacements as well, in your opinion?
Yeah, it'll start at a base of 100, just like the beef and grid scores and total scores were. So it's same kind of baseline average and goes up and down from there based on the composition of the genetics. And so I think it'll be really unique. I mean, it's not to say that also those cattle that have maybe a higher M score or maternal replacement kind of score won't have the same kind of performance as well. There's probably a lot of cattle that'll cross over. But you'll see it starting to pop up, and that'll just be on female lots with that M score. And then there's some guidelines as far as percentage Angus on that. So when we develop that this M scores, the percentage on the females is.
We are actually requiring they have to be Angus verified with that in a high percentage Angus female base. Unlike the terminal traits where we have really good crossbreed adjustments with the other breeds, we really don't have that on the maternal side yet. So we are limiting the maternal score to really high percentage Angus cattle.
Which we've got a lot of information on, so we can again verify that and be comfortable about putting out an accurate number when they're looking at using replacement females. Yeah.
Well, obviously, there's a lot of opportunities, and for the producers that are watching this here today, too, I hope it inspires them to look at the possibility of completing an audit. There's no DNA testing. I think that's been a lot of discussion and questions I know you have received, but the audit's pretty simple. It's a bull battery. What other things maybe have we skipped over, or maybe some misconceptions about the enrolling in AngusLink that maybe we didn't address? That truly is. It's a lot easier than maybe it would seem if you just look quickly at the website and say, maybe next year.
Yeah. Well, I think the basics, the return on investment is there. We've documented that, and so a purser feel good about that. And I really do think it's a simple process. If you know what bulls you're using, we can really start to move forward with that process. You do have to have, I guess, the first and last calf born or some of that on agent source, but it's not a complicated process. And Leann and John, I think, hit on that too. The value of information and data, this industry is changing. You're sending a signal that you're a progressive producer, you want to do that. And with the benchmarking and the marketing opportunities, I really think in 5 to 10 years, the majority of the cattle in the country will sell with a Genetic Merit Scorecard or something similar, because it gives the buyers the confidence and the ability to differentiate that product. And if we make a better product, we create more beef demand.
Very, very true. What closing thoughts here? I guess, what are you individually all looking forward to for the future of the cattle industry? I mean, we have ups and downs. We know that. We always tend to focus on the downs sometimes when we're crying into our beer someday at the bar. But I guess, what are you all looking forward to individually about the future of the livestock industry?
Well,
you get to go first.
I get to go first.
Yeah. You looked around, so that was the indicator. Like, Troy gets it now.
I get it. Well, I'm just looking forward to green grass, and then I think once we have that, the next 3 to 4 years are going to be ones we tell our grandkids about. Really historic, tight supplies, great demand, and I'm really excited too when I look at, as we've improved quality and efficiency of our product, we've increased beef demand, and I think we're at a point where we're changing not only the way we market cattle, the information, the genetics, all those things at one time. And I'm excited about the future of the beef industry.
I'm super bullish on the beef industry. As we look to the future, I think we talked about sustainability, and when you think about the most important thing with sustainability, it's profitability on these individual operations. And so the opportunity to add value and more differentiation and pricing for the producers doing all these really great things, I think is exciting. More supply chain alignment that gets them more data so they can make better decisions. So I'm very optimistic for the future of the beef industry.
So I'm going to go in a little bit different direction. What I'm excited about is the generational change in attitude that I've seen, and the less gray hair that we see at these type of events, and people that are really excited. We've just had our two of our 3 children that have joined us in the company. They're super excited. One of them is here today with us. So I think the younger generation is what I'm excited about, because 10 years ago, as the industry was aging, you didn't see a lot of young people that were walking around, and now it seems like, maybe I'm just getting old, but well, I'm definitely getting old. But it is a definite change of scenery, and I think that's encouraging, because it seems like young people are excited about getting back into their operations, which hasn't been going on as long, from my perspective.
I feel targeted because I started going gray at like 27. If I take my hat off, you'll see the gray there. But I just laugh because the keynote speaker at the opening session, and I have rallied on this for years. They're like, oh, the millennials, our knees hurt now. The millennials are in their mid 30s all the way into their 40s. I quit ganging up on us. I'm glad he highlighted it, because I feel I get undue blame for things, and I've been a 60-year-old man since I was 12, so that's my hair. But sorry, John, I had to throw a little comments there too. But what are your thoughts on the future, and what are you bullish on?
Yeah, I'm bullish on our demand. I mean, I think it's been really, really exciting to see. I mean, I guess I consider high prices in the meat case in the supermarket, and demand hasn't weakened one bit. What that market signals to me is that we're producing a quality product. It's consistent, it's high quality. It's maybe not the cheapest to make with inputs where they're at, but I think those from the seed stock to the commercial bull buyer to the feeder packer on those sections, the extra steps they're taking programs like this to add quality on a consistent basis, they're going to be rewarded for it. Hope those rewards keep trickling down, and there's kind of a piece everywhere for everyone. So looks good.
Well, I think our conversation today does really reinforce that there's so much innovation in the industry, but it takes initiative. It takes the conversations that the board member and the association are having, but also what they're hearing from their commercial producers. Who is innovative? Who wants to enroll in these programs and make the profit? And the guys that are making money and having really good success with it, they're the ones that put their toe in the water first, and they're trusted as well. And I can't wait to see how that enrollment grows, because I think it only will continue to grow.
Yeah, we're excited about the future.
Hey, any last thoughts before I let you get back to your day here at Angus Convention?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate the exposure.
Well, thank you all. And of course, we've had a lot of great coverage and conversations down here. So thank you to IMI and to Angus Link for bringing our conversations and coverage on the Western Ag Network and the LaneCast Ag Podcast this week. And for our audience members, I hope you walked away with something that maybe you can look at to help really reinforce your operations and look at these programs as an opportunity to better yourself, better your cattle, and better those marketing opportunities as well. Well, friends, that will do it for this LaneCast Ag Podcast from the trade show at Angus Convention 2024. Thank you for joining us here today. We will have links to how you can learn more about Angus Link and IMI and all the other bundles you can participate in in the description of the podcast. So thank you for joining us here today as well. And I'm Lane Nordlund. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for tuning into the LaneCast with Talkin' Ag, Lane Nordlund. For more on Lane, check out his Facebook page, Lane Nordlund Ag Broadcaster, and NordlundCommunications.com.